Hyperdrive Hockey is brought to you by the Game Over Network. Make sure to follow us on YouTube at Game Over Network and catch Hyperdrive Hockey in audio format on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or any other good streaming platform. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Hyperdrive Hockey, the very first of 2025. I feel, though, like it's too late to wish each other a happy new year, so hope everyone's back happy, healthy, hydrated, and still enjoying hockey, because it does feel like a whole new season since the last time we talked to each other. Make sure to give Game Over Network a subscribe, give us a like on YouTube, catch us on anywhere where you catch your podcast, and we are now published every Monday and Thursday. So brand new for 2025. Catch Hyperdrive Hockey any day you want. That's the beauty of a podcast. But know that we are now published every Monday and Thursday. I think she enjoyed her holidays. Daphne Malbeuf, how are you doing?
Oh, pretty good, Max. I had a few days under the sun, as you can see. It was because, I had to go to see where the NHL games, the outside games, will be, played next year. So
we knew it was coming, but still absolutely crazy.
It was 25 degrees in January 2. I don't know how are they going to pull it, but whatever. I really enjoyed the holidays. I hope you did too, guys. And I'm really glad we're back.
An outdoor hockey game in South Florida.
Crazy.
I'm having trouble playing on my outdoor ring at the park right next to my house more than 5 times a winter because of the fluctuation of the weather. And there will be an outdoor hockey game in South Florida. Well, 2 technically. Is Tampa considered South Florida or Central Florida? I think it's Central Florida, and it's Western Florida.
Central,
anyways, yeah. Anyways, Kevin Laramie, my man, how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Eventful, a little holiday period, but we're here. We're happy to talk about hockey. And, I've been quite surprised by a few things during the holiday season. The Montreal Canadiens, Lane Hudson, and my Matvei Michkov prediction might not come true. And it might not even be celebrating who wins it. Exactly. Shout out to Lane Hudson this holiday period, who is having quite a season. But yeah, no, it's been an eventful and fun hockey holiday.
It's completely crazy what happened in the last 3/4 of a month in the National Hockey League, at the World Juniors, of course. What a terrible World Junior for Canada. Thankfully, the women saved our honor at the U18 Women's World Championship. So a lot of crazy stories. So today, it will not be the story today. It will be the stories today. And since I'm looking at them, I'm looking at all the topics we have today. And since to me, almost, not all of them, but almost all of them are pretty surprising, or the very least seem fluky, we will do a fluke or no fluke. So we will talk about each subject, and at the end, we will tell if we think it's a fluke or not a fluke. Will it keep going? Won't it keep going? And we're starting out, Wes. Is there a bigger story right now in the NHL, or at least, is there a bigger story outside of the ice in the NHL right now than what is going on in Vancouver with Elias Peterson and JT Miller? The last time we talked, they were rumbling, it was starting, but if you allow me, the shit hit the fan. Clearly, things are not going well between EP40 and JT Miller. Pretty much every insider who published a trade bait list have not one, but both of them at the top of it. And to me, that's the crazy thing, Daph, because usually when that type of things happen, especially between 2 superstars on the same team, you identify the star you're going to keep going with, and unfortunately, one of them goes. No, both of them might be gone.
Yeah, and in that case, we are all wondering what happened, because, as you said, it's not the typical scenario. Disliking a coworker is not a new concept. It happens, in every
sphere of work.
Absolutely. And but the difference between office jobs and the NHL is that, your teammates, and you need to get along to, perform on the ice. So I'm guessing in that case, should be working something that, it seems like they cannot see paths through it. And I feel this is really bad because if we're seeing both go, what the hell is like the Vancouver Canucks are going to do? And I'm looking at it and I'm like, okay, they're going to have the upper hand, like they're going to have to make a hard decision, but this could be really like a drastic change for
Yeah.
them. And
I'm
for
trying
the
to
years
think of
being,
I'm trying to think of a similar situation that happened, and I can't identify one. I remember it was a big shock in the NHL. Remember trying to think, must have been 20, maybe 2010, 2011, around 2012, early 2010s, when the Philadelphia Flyers traded in the same summer both superstars Mike Richards and Jeff Carter. It was not because they didn't get along. It might have
yeah,
been the total opposite, actually. They might have been getting along quite too well off
too
the
well.
ice, if we remember correctly what happened. You could say Pacioretty Subban in Montreal in 2016, but none of them actually ever acknowledged that there was a rift. PK now works in media. He has interviewed Patch. Clearly, they were not the best of friends, but it was a hockey transaction for Marc Bergevin. He thought Shea Weber would bring more. We're not, it wasn't quite the same thing. Literally, a team going, hey, you know what, both of you, we're going to try and get you out of here because they are too much of a distraction to the team. I don't know. I don't remember anything like it. A few weeks ago, I would have said that seems pretty easy since JT Miller went on some time off and Elias Peterson is younger. He has the bigger contract. Clearly, JT Miller is going to be the guy off and Peterson is going to stay, but clearly that ain't the case. I don't think that's a fluke, guys. I think they will both be gone. I don't think you get all the way there, and maybe I'm wrong. And honestly, for EP at least, I hope I'm wrong. I think this guy is with Quinn Hughes, or at least should be the franchise player with Quinn Hughes, or the second franchise player. But the way things have gone in these past few weeks, I don't think it's a fluke. I think at the worst case scenario, at the end of the season, before EP40's clause kicks in, because he can be traded right now to anybody, is no movement clause kicks in at the end of the season, I think they will both be gone.
Oh, and that is a huge statement because when you're looking at this, I'm like, I don't think, or I think that the other teams, smell the good deal here. And if you're going to
Yeah.
trade both of them, you need to have something really good in return because you're getting a big piece of your team going. And I'm looking at the situation and I don't know where if they can have, an understanding between them and just like trying to fix things. But it is hard to find star talent in the
It
NHL. It is
is.
hard to build a good team. And let's just remember that this team, they took the Edmonton Oilers in Game 7 last year. So this is a pretty good team. And this was without their number one goalies, and this was without Brock Besser being in game number 7. So if you're the Canucks, you're thinking about this because if
Yeah,
you're letting those two players go, who are you replacing them with? And
that is
if
true.
I look at what they need, obviously a centerman
Yeah,
because
you're gonna want a top center back. You're losing two
absolutely.
top centers, 200-point centers.
And I know that they're looking for a top 4 defenseman because they need help with their first pair. I mean, a number one centerman and a top 4 defenseman. These maybe are the two hardest players to get on the market.
Yeah.
So, like with the value, so with the situation now, I think that they are really devalued as players on the market. Other teams are gonna want to, like take this opportunity to have them as, just like on sale.
Yeah. The one
But
thing that makes me think that maybe EP ain't gone, and that's practically what you're saying, is that his value is so much lower right now because he's in the midst of his worst season in 3 years. He was a 100-point player 2 years ago, 89-point player last year, and right now he's under a point per game for the first time since 21-22. But here's the thing, the big contract is going to kick in. So now suddenly, if you have cold feet about the 11 plus million contract that he's going to get, maybe you're not that, bitter to trade away that player at a discount. On the other hand, though, according to some reporters, the New York Rangers came in and offered straight up Mika Zibanejad for JT Miller. And honestly, when I was looking at this, I was like, okay, but why would they say no to that? Because if you're getting, to me, at the very least, a similar valued player in terms of skills, in terms of offensive possibilities. And personally, I'm a big fan of Mika Zibanejad. But the thing is, Mika Zibanejad and Elias Peterson are more, like strictly, I know, like, and there were, who was it? It was Quinn Hughes who said, maybe 2 days ago on this weekend that they were toying with Peterson's yelling Selke on the bench because he was playing some good defensive shifts. Elias Peterson, when he is on, he is a very good all-around centerman. The problem is he's not always on, and when he's not always on, he's seen a bit as a lazy man. He's seen as a non-physical man, and suddenly if you have him and Zibanejad, in a way there are some similarities. Whereas I feel like JT Miller and Peterson, to me, they're complementary players. They're both really highly skilled offensive player, but
Absolutely.
JT Miller has the grit, JT Miller has the passion,
The leadership.
sometimes too much. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's what gets me thinking that maybe EP is going to stay put.
And you know what? For me, if I had a guess to take, you just said it. Like, I feel like we've talked about Elias Peterson consistency, who was lacking in the past few years. Sometimes it seems like he's been sluggish, maybe more often than not. And maybe the Canucks will see this as a time to move on and will decide to keep GT Miller and trade Peterson. And for me, I feel like one would stay on and not the two of them be traded. So Fluke for me.
Kev, do you have a take on this? Do you think they're both gone? One of them stays put? No one is gone.
I actually
maybe nobody leaves.
No, but I think eventually both will leave because from what I'm hearing, of course, there's a rift between the players, but I also think that rift between the players is creating a rift with Rick Tocchet. And Rick Tocchet, as a manager, has not been necessarily the most patient. And when you're in his good graces, you're part of the team. Once you're in the doghouse, it's really rare you come back into the core of that team. So with Rick Tocchet almost feeling like he needs to make an example to make sure that his players continue to listen to him, if we look in some of the statistics of the Vancouver Canucks this year, they're not playing in a Rick Tocchet team type of way. They're not blocking shots, one of the worst teams in the league. They're having difficulties creating turnovers. They're having way too many turnovers. Those little things that are usually associated with a Rick Tocchet team are not panning out this year. A shift needs to be made, and I do believe both will be traded. The question is, where will they land? Will one land somewhere close to the other? I actually think both can be in New York, just in a different team. There's a lot of rumbling saying that Elias Peterson or JT Miller could go with the Islanders and reconnect with Bo Horvat. There's also some familiarities between Luna Moriello and the Vancouver Canucks, having traded in the past. So those are some of the rumblings that are out there. We'll see if it pans out, but I think both will not play for the Canucks after the trade deadline.
Oh, and it will be interesting to see. Of course, almost 2 months until the trade deadline. There kind of is a pre-trade deadline with the Four Nation face-off. Apparently, a lot of teams will be looking to be set, at least in the decision making, by that date in mid-February. So we will see. We will see what will happen in Vancouver. Meanwhile, all the way back in the East, I think Gary Bettman might be the happiest man in the world right now for what is happening in the East, because one of the reasons Gary Bettman likes his parity so much is because the National Hockey League, of course, among the big leagues in North America, the men's big leagues in North America, is the team that is the most dependent from tickets revenue. And what is good for ticket sales is when your team is in the mix, is when your team can aspire to the playoffs until late in the season. And right now, almost, I think we can start to count out the Buffalo Sabres. It's getting late for the Islanders and the Flyers, but even there, almost everybody can still aspire to the Stanley Cup playoffs. And among them that I would have never bet a single dollar on it all the way back on December 1st is the Montreal Canadiens. They were 31st in the league in points percentage at the start of December. What happened on December 3? Patrick Laine came in, scored a big goal against the New York Islanders. The Montreal Canadiens won that game in overtime, and they've only been looking up since. They've been climbing and climbing. Right now, they are 2 points out of a playoff spot. Of course, it's absolutely crazy. Pittsburgh, Montreal, Detroit, Ottawa, Columbus, Boston with their slide, and you can almost even include in that the New York Rangers, are all in a photo finish from each other. But what the heck is going on in Montreal, Daph?
It was like the Christmas miracle. Just remember, like, ever since I can remember, I feel like the holiday road trip has been a disaster, and one of the part of the season that just like makes the team derail from everything that's been, like previously to this road trip. And the Montreal Canadiens has been like unrecognizable. For me, this is the word, because we've seen this team having the lead and just like falling off and losing the game. We've seen this team battling, but a little too late and not being able to win games. The confidence of this team was really at its downest point beginning of December. And just like that, I feel like the 2 games in Florida at the beginning of the road trip just like changed the way that they were, like it just gave a little confidence back. And maybe this is just what they needed, but they also really improved on defensive side. We had now Alex Carrier, who joined the team.
That trade on December 18th is huge.
It's very huge, because I was talking with friends, this summer about, we've traded veterans, and I was like, okay, this is not good, because in such a young team, you need veterans who can, get off the weight on the youngest player's shoulder and be able to, like you can rely on them over and over again. And this is what Carrier brings, I feel, to the defensive unit. It's a guy that is not, like spectacular, but is just like good at doing his job, and it's just steady. And I feel like it changed a lot of this scenario, and it's just been good for the Montreal Canadiens. So they've improved on the defensive side, and they got a little confidence back. And Kent Hughes was talking last week, about like maybe a turning point in the season being the game against the Golden Knights, where we found a way, the Montreal Canadiens found a way to battle back, even if the beginning of the game wasn't that good. And I feel that, like they are building on that. They are building on that confidence. It's not going to be pretty every night, every now and then, but it's a good start. And it's a good start to just like, build off that maybe last part of the season and looking at what we are going to do for the next season. So planning ahead for the next campaign.
Patrick Laine, Alexandre Carrier, and of course, suddenly a second goalie who wins games. Jakub Dobeš winning his 3-star, giving 3 goals total. Caden Primo had not given less than 3 goals in a game a single time this year. Jakub Dobeš comes in. He has given 3 goals in 3 starts. One of them went in OT. Well, actually, 2 of them went into OT. 2 of them went into the shutout against Colorado, against Washington. He beat Florida. He beat Colorado. He beat Washington. He beats good teams. So, honestly, Dobeš playing, I think he's really good. I think that kid has a future. But
Yeah.
I think this might be the only little fluky part. I mean, the guy's not going to come in and be Bezina caliber already. Other than that, I don't think it's a fluke for Montreal. They're playing better. They're playing solid. I don't think it's good enough to get into the playoffs this year. But I think that right now they are where they thought they were going to be at the start of the season. And for that, no fluke.
No fluke for me, Max. And I wanted to talk also, like, with you about something that Kent you said during his, mid-season conference last week. It was about the culture. And he said that he was starting to feel that this team was building, winning culture. And we've been talking a lot about the Montreal Canadiens culture, and to hear it from the GM itself himself, I don't know for you, but that was really reassuring for me, and at least for the Habs fans.
Well, it's because you see it. The game against the Vancouver Canucks, it was a week ago from the moment we are recording. It wasn't a Monday night. From the get-go, that looked like a playoff game. From the get-go, some players like Caden Gooley threw some big hits. They were big hits given by the Vancouver Canucks. They said, oh, you want to throw the hit? We're coming for your kid. They went after Lane Hudson. What did he do? A goal and 2 assists. Not even shaking. He was like Monica and Friends. Steady hand, like a rock. That was absolutely beautiful to see. Going toe-to-toe with Quinn Hughes, who's the player many people compare him to. Quinn Hughes, of course, already a superstar in the league. So, yeah, you actually see it. The game against the Dallas Stars this week, it was a road game at home for the Montreal Canadiens. What I mean by this is they were in Washington the night prior. They came back at 3 a.m. because they had some playing problem. The Dallas Star game coming into the Bell Center on a 6-game winning streak, fresh. And Montreal, don't play a pretty game, but find a way to go get that point in OD. So, yeah, you can totally see it. So, 2 no flukes. Kev, fluke or no fluke?
I don't think it's a fluke, just because I know it's not a fluke.
So that means it's a fluke if we all agree.
That's true. You know what? When you watch those countdowns of the NFL and they all agree that one team will win, you know that the other team is actually going to be winning.
Exactly.
I've been doing a little deep dive. Since December 17th, Montreal is the number 1 team in the league with 9 wins, 2 losses, and 1 loss in OT. 19 points, a win percentage of 792, 43 goals for, 26 goals against, an average of 3.6 goals per game. Only conceding 2.17. That is the big difference, of course, when you look at the power play, Patrick Laine coming in, but it feels like Patrick Laine's power play is also giving some confidence to the other players to actually try.
Oh, yeah, yes. I agree.
Right? So they don't feel like they need to be defensively as sound. Like they're taking that chance to go offensively. Lane Hudson as the quarterback of the power play, and also just finding passing lane, finding his teammates. It feels like offensively this team turned a corner and is not afraid of the backlash that if they lose the puck trying to get to the goal, or they feel like it has a little offensive power now, and one of the best in the league offensively speaking since December 17th, and literally the best team in the league since December 17th.
We might bite our tongues in a few weeks because after that Utah game on Tuesday night, Dallas, Toronto, the Rangers, Tampa, Red Wings, Devils, Jets, Wild, and then a seemingly, quotation mark, easy road trips with games against the Ducks and the Sharks, and then the Kings. So a California trip, but it's always tough for East Coast teams to go in California and have a good road trip. So by the start of February, we will have a definitive answer about this Habs team. Is there a better feel-good story than the Columbus Blue Jackets right now in all of sports? In all of sports, they have never had more than a point per game player in the same season. They currently have 3. Werenski, Marchenko, and how about my man Sean Monahan playing his heart out for his friend Johnny Gaudreau this year? There's nothing to say about the Columbus Blue Jacket. I don't think there is a single person around the hockey planet cheering against that team. I was completely sure that the Jack Adams was locked in Washington, but suddenly Dean Evison in Columbus is an intriguing choice. And kudos to the Blue Jackets. They're playing with their heart on their sleeve. Zach Werenski also suddenly challenging Kel McCarr for the Norris Trophy. It's absolutely beautiful to see. At the start of this season, I was like, could you imagine the Blue Jackets going on a run this year? And, it was more wishful thinking than anything because on paper, that team, unfortunately, did not look good. And now they're playing absolutely beautiful hockey. And I don't think there is my head says Fluke, but I don't want to say Fluke. Nobody wants to say Fluke. No Fluke to the Blue Jackets, the Columbus Blue Jacket. Go ahead, fellas, get in there.
Yeah, we don't want to, we don't want to jinx it, right? Because this is one of the league's best story and not even close. And talking about unexpected developments, it's been one of the league's most forgettable teams for decades.
It is. I respectfully mean that to me, the Columbus Blue Jackets are an NPC franchise.
Absolutely.
The very few Columbus Blue Jackets fans that I know hate me because I keep saying this. But
it's
there's
true.
They don't make the playoff often. My all due respect to Rick Nash, great player, but he's the best player in franchise history. He would barely be top three in a lot of teams. My respect. They're in Columbus, Ohio.
Yeah.
Their jerseys are not good, not bad. So, yeah.
Yeah. And, statistically, in 25 season, they only made the playoffs 6 times. Only won 1 series in 7 games. This is why they were, one of the worst teams for a decade. But now you're looking at this and you're like, okay, this team is rolling. Won 8 of their last 11 games, including wins against contenders like Devils and Hurricanes. And you've said it, Max. They're a high-scoring offense. And who would have thought that at the beginning of the season? Because there were many young players who needed more, to prove themselves. And so, it was unclear how good they would perform offensively. And now you're looking at this. And they average 3.4 goals per game. So they're around the 5th best team in the NHL. Looking at this, they have maybe 2 90-pointers producers in Zach Werenski and Marchenko, and on pace to have 30-goal scorers in Marchenko and Vorokov. So I'm looking at that and like, oh, I don't want this to be a fluke. I want to be in the bandwagon because of the tragedy that happened before the season started, and just like for having a good thing to add to this tragedy. Yeah. We all want this for them. Is this a fluke or is it not? I don't know, but I don't want to be the one who jinxes it. And, we all look at the East and we're like, from now we could all say that, every team could be like a playoff, could have a playoff spot. But I feel like they are really in the hunt. Like they are not, a team that were maybe like there are 5 points and like they have 6 teams to pass on to get like to the playoffs. So I would like to say that this is not a fluke.
And suddenly Adam Fantilli has 6 points in 5 games. If Adam Fantilli finds his groove in the second half of the season, this is going to be beautiful. Kev, are you joining the bandwagon? Please join in the bandwagon.
I want to, and I don't want to be the one also to throw them under the bus for obvious reasons.
No, come in.
But I do believe, statistically speaking, they can't sustain that for a whole season. I'm not going to say it's a fluke because I believe they'll hang around the mix. They'll be close to the mix for the end of the season. And just that is a win for Columbus. They could have, and they had all the reasons to become a bad team this year. They would have the excuses, and they couldn't really been bad. I think with Dean Evison, they're going to just hang around and maybe be 2-3 positions out of the playoff spot for the wild card. Defensively, they need to not concede as many goals, 3.5 per games. Over the long run, it's not going to be sustainable. But for now, the story is great, and Zach Werenski becoming a Norris potential candidate and one of the best defensemen in the league offensively is not expected, but it's staying there. He's got 48 points right now, and I do believe that with this contribution, they'll hang around. So it's not a fluke because they'll hang around the playoff spots.
Werenski was always good. It was always the injuries with him. Meanwhile, I do think Detroit is a fluke, guys. 7 wins in a row. Patrick Kane turned back the clock. He's the best scorer in the league since December 29. So during that streak of 7 games, he has 13 points, 5 goals, 8 assists, 4 2-point game. This is Chicago Blackhawks Patrick Kane. But I do think it's the change of coach effect. They lost their first game under Todd McLellan. Now they're on the roll. I do not think it's sustainable. I have nothing more to say than Detroit Red Wings, fluke.
Yeah, like the vibes are really good now, but how about like in a few games? Because, this is always like the beginning of a new era with a new coach, but how long can it stay is my question. There's big question marks, as you said. Like they are treated with vintage Patrick Kane, and we love it. Like 11 points in the 6-game winning streak. But I'm looking at that. I'm like, there are a lot of things that need to change to be sustainable. I'm looking at the game that was yesterday afternoon, though, and I'm like, oh, there's some things that are changing that maybe are leading me to think that this can be for real. Like, they've been struggling with leads a lot this year, and in the first 8 minutes of the game, they took a 4-0 lead, and you're like, this is maybe the worst thing because you have a whole game to play and just like, to keep the lead on. But they were able to. So like the fact that they've been able to surpass one of their biggest challenge is a proof that things are going, better, good. But for me, non-sustainable. And I feel like they're not going to be bad in the next few months, but there's a lot of things that they need to adjust to be like good consistently.
We agree on almost everything so far. Kevin, fluke or no fluke in Detroit?
It's definitely a fluke. It's the proverbial coach bump. Todd McLellan coming in. And it's easy to look good as a coach when you're taking over from Derek Lalonde. Like, he's one of the worst coach I've ever seen in the NHL.
Wow. My man Derek Lalonde taking straight shots here today.
Oh, he looked like he had no clue what was happening, not only on the ice, but in his own life. He just looked like a deer in the headlights behind the bench. I've did a few games this year of the Detroit Red Wings, and every time they would cut to him, he would look like he had no clue what was happening. He would just look at the players, look at his sheet, look at his tablet. No emotion, no... hockey is different than the other sports. You need some emotion from the coach. You need a little bit of a transitional energy between the coach to the players, and then it transmits on the ice. Derek Lalonde had the energy of a cell phone with 0%. So that's the amount of feels I got from him. That's a lot. That's not nothing, right? So that's what I think. And of course, they 7 games straight, but they beat the Kraken. They beat the Blackhawks. They beat the Senators, who were on a losing skid. And also,
without Linus Ullmark.
And without Linus Ullmark, without any good goaltending right now. And they beat the Penguins. Okay, they beat the Capitals and they beat the Jets. But even a broken clock is right twice during a day. And I think that's exactly what we saw in that stretch. They're going to get the Sharks, so maybe that's a win. But then the Panthers, the Lightning, the Stars, the Canadiens after Philly, and then the Lightning again. That's going to be the real stretch. And that's going to be a few losses for Detroit.
Meanwhile, Boston, the big, bad Boston Bruins are 30th in the league in points percentage since Christmas. And guys, I'm going back-to-back hot take here. This is the first one. I'm starting to believe the Bruins are going to miss the playoffs. They're going to miss the playoffs. I think that you called it the proverbial coach bump, Kevin. Well, the proverbial coach bump is gone for Boston. This season was going to be a wreck from the start, from the way it was managed in the summer. Elias Lindholm really isn't a good addition. He's not giving them big play that they were hoping when they signed him. And now, you know what? This is actually quite funny because there is the riff in Vancouver. Now there were report of riff in Boston between Pasta and Marchand. And you know what's
Yeah.
hilarious is that when JT Miller went and said, you want me to go and get EP and we'll tell you that we're fine with each other right in front of you, I was like, ha, I don't believe you. Like, bring it. Like, you're both lying. Like, and when Marchand came in and like passionately called
Yeah.
out the poor guy on his report, then went on Instagram showing a picture of him and passed that through the year. I was like, yeah, I actually kind of believe him that this might
Yeah.
be bull crap.
And like when your team is tumbling down, like friction is maybe kind of understandable.
It's normal.
It's normal. It's normal. And like there are two competitors, so I can see it being just like a little friction, but I doubt, like as you said, in the way that Marchand addressed the situation and called out more than calling out the guy. He said like there there was lie like being on the media. So yeah, I
He
don't
threw him
think
under the bus, rolled with the bus, got back out of the bus, kicked him in the gut, went back into the bus, and rolled on him again.
Poor guy.
absolutely. And for a reason, for a good reason, but you're looking at that, Max, and okay, that they snapped their 6 game losing streak. But it's worse than the stretch that got Jim Montgomery fired. So
Yeah.
we're wondering, like, was this really like, was this really necessary to fire
Well,
Jim
from the
Montgomery?
get-go, I was against the firing of Montgomery. So
Absolutely. And you're looking at what's not working. You said it, Lehome maybe not the guy that brings like the firepower. Pasternak being merely good, not great like he used to be. Marchand is starting to look like a guy who's 36, and there isn't enough supporting to cover it up. And Swayman maybe has not yet to match his play. We knew, like, we expected him to start slowly after everything that happened. He wasn't at camp, and the pressure of adjusting to being the full-time number one. But I don't know. Like, I feel like this is maybe deeper. Like, we need to address what are we doing. So are we, keep adding things to, like pack up the team, or are we starting to look at what is our next move to just, like fill up the pipeline and maybe thinking about not a reconstruction, but maybe a restart for the Bruins? And for me, as you said, I think that they were going to miss the playoffs. And is Don Sweeney on the hot seat to figure
He
all of
should
it
be.
out?
Yeah.
he should be.
He
He
should.
should be.
Yeah, no,
He should.
that's beautifully said, and I have to say I agree also. I think it's not a fluke. I think the Bruins will struggle, and there's a good chance also that they will miss the playoffs. I do feel like what you mentioned, Brad Marchand's age, it's not just him.
No.
I did a game earlier this week, and over that 6 game losing streak, the core, outside of Pasternak, the core of the team from Elias Lindholm, who's injured. No, he's not injured. Empus is injured. But from Elias Lindholm, Justin Brazeau, and Brad Marchand, they barely had 2 points in the entire stretch each. And that also tells me that there's something wrong. The power play was dead. They were 0-19, 0% during that stretch. It came back to 8 games without a power play goals for Boston. Started 2 games before the losing streak. I think it does highlights the fact that it wasn't Jim Montgomery's fault. And when you replace the head coach with an assistant, that is also something that is peculiar. And we'll see how it happens. He's still just interim, and I wouldn't be surprised in the offseason if Joe Sacco is just also let go. And next year we have somebody new in Boston.
Yeah, but
Guys-
as Joe Sacco said, sorry, Max, but it's on them internally. So they need to figure it out. But you've said it, Kev. They need more, firepower to just like help Marchand and Pasternak.
I couldn't agree more with both of you. Now,
Look.
I might lose a lot of people here because I'm about to do something I try not to do usually, and it's the following. If at the half of the season you do not have the one and only, the best goaltender in the world at this moment, Connor Hellebuyck as your Hart Trophy favorite, MVP favorite, you don't know a thing about the beautiful position of goaltending in hockey. My man Connor Hellebuyck is standing on his head, carrying the Winnipeg Jets to one of the best seasons in the recent years in hockey. He is doing it beautifully. He is doing it maybe on his way to a record-setting season for wins by a goalie. He has 6 shutout at the half of the season. He is close to under 2 goal against per game average in an era where there are more goals getting scored than they were in the past 10 years. Of course, I'm from Montreal. Of course, I'm all in on my man Carey Price, but that would be even more impressive than Carey Price doing it all the way back in 2014, 2015. And to top it all off, what happened to the Montreal Canadiens when Price got injured the year after Price was named MVP? With him in the lineup for the first 12 games, they were number 1 in the league. With him out of the lineup when he got injured, for the span that he was not there, they were dead last in the league. Well, what happened with Connor Hellebuyck isn't in the net for the Jets, which hasn't happened often. My man is going to play close to 70 games this year, which is not something is very usual in the NHL right now. When Eric Comrie, nothing against Eric Comrie, is in net, the Jets are 3-6-1. Yes, not Connor Hellebuyck, but Nathan McKinnon is amazing in Colorado. Yes, Kirill Kaprizov is amazing in Minnesota. These guys are MVP by themselves, but respect to Connor Hellebuyck. He is the MVP, and that is no fluke. My man can already put his name on the Vizina for all I know, even if he got injured today. Give him the Vizina right now. Right now.
Give it
Thank
to
you
him.
for listening.
Now, thank you for coming to my goalies TED Talk.
I'm out now. All yours, guys. I'm done for today.
No, but I feel like you've said it. Like, if we're looking at what makes goalie a Vizina caliber, it all applies to him. He can elevate his team. He's capable of transcending the play in front of him. You know, he's the centerpiece, one of the masterpieces of this team right now. And it's kind of frustrating. It has to be frustrating for some players because you're looking at him and you're like, he's making it look so easy. It's like he's so big, he's so calm, like the way he seems to be always like in control, and he seems to just like, you know, conserves his energy and like make saves look simple from all the shooting angles. He's just like making few adjustments and he's there. So I feel like for some players, this might be frustrating. But if I look at him, I see, you know, some of the qualities that you have when you want to sell a car, which is durability and consistency. And for me, these are the qualities that convinced me to sign at the bottom of the sheet right away and buy this car. So I'm all in for Hellebuyck. And I feel like in an era where we see more of a trend towards a goalie tandems, it's crazy to see him, you know, carry all of this on his shoulder and all of this heavy workload and being capable of maintaining an elite play. So for all of that, this is no fluke for me. He's going to be the Vizina winner and maybe more. Maybe.
Thank you. There isn't a single, I was looking, there isn't a single goalie statistic. He isn't, well, I mean, he's not first in the loss, obviously. I'm going to rephrase that. There isn't a single positive goalie statistic that he isn't first in right now. He's first in games started. He's first in wins. He's first in saves. He's first in save percentage, goal against average, time on the ice, shutout. He is first in goal save above expected. Even Carey Price and Josie Theodore, the last 2 MVP goalies, didn't do that. We're number 1 in every single statistic. Of course, it could change until the end of the season. But this is why, to me, Number 37 in Winnipeg is the MVP right now.
Yeah. The only thing he needs to add to his resume is playoff success.
I
That would be
agree, but this is irrelevant to the hard conversation. So if you're here coming, he can't win in the playoffs, he sucks in the playoffs. That's cool. I'm not saying I disagree, but that's irrelevant to the fact that he is the MVP of this season right now. Kev, what do you think?
Well, yeah, there's no way I can argue because also if you said that if I argue, I don't know anything about hockey. So no, you're right. Absolutely. Everything's good. Hellebuyck's the reincarnation of Jesus between pipes, and he's doing great this year.
I
was going to say, I don't know if he's Catholic, so I don't know if we insulted his religion, but let's not go there. All right. So on this, I hope I just made myself a big fan base in Winnipeg. All right. Well, talking goalies, I'm gonna spoil right away who's number one in the goalie power ranking for January.
Ooh.
I just talked about him. So let's talk about the 4 other guys right now. Let's get to it.
Okay, so Max, you already spoiled your number one, but
he's been number one since the start of the season. So
and he hasn't changed. Like this is the is he the only one that hasn't changed position?
Yeah, in my ranking, he is. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so your time to shine, Max. We're gonna look at the goalies' performances with our goalie power ranking. Who do we have at number 5? And we're gonna, circle back a little later, but there are some surprises in this power ranking. But let's start with number 5.
I almost skipped it this month because we are January 13th, and I just wait till February. But no, you know what? December was an important month, so some players. I'm not going to name them already, but could drop in February. I did not look at what happened so far in January, so this is the power ranking after December. Anthony Stolarz dropped from number 5, but strictly because he is injured, unfortunately. I think that by his performance, he would still be there. I think he's going to climb back. But number 5 is Lukas Dostal, who's surely but slowly been going down a bit after a heck of a start to the season. But even though if you look at his statistics and they're not pretty at first sight, 10th in wins at 27th, in wins with only 10, 37th in the league at the 2.93 goal against average. He's still 3rd in the league in goal save above expected. Doing what he does behind the Anaheim Ducks, to me, is still incredibly impressive. I think this is the reason the Ducks are so confident in trading away John Gibson. I do think John Gibson will be traded away at the trade deadline, and I think they have their goalie of the future in Lukas Dostal. And to me, he is the prime example that when evaluating goalie, you need to look past the traditional statistics and look at who he plays behind, how he impacts the team, because I still think Lukas Dostal is one of the good goalies in the NHL this season.
And talking about, looking over the statistics, is this why you chose Jake Ottinger at number 4?
Yeah, well, I had him at number 2 before December. And here's the thing with Jake Ottinger this year. He's having a weird season. He's a big fan of Katy Perry, apparently, because he's hot or cold. He has only 20 quality starts out of 31. He has 8 really bad starts. So those 8 really bad starts particularly drop his total stats. He's still 2nd in wins, which to me, if you've been listening to me for a while, this isn't the first metric you should evaluate a goalie. It's as much a team statistics as it is a goalie statistic. In fact, I don't even think wins should necessarily be counted as a goalie statistic. He's still 7th in the league at 2.35 GAA. So that's the thing with the Otter. He's hot and cold. Since I had him high in October and November, I'm waiting a bit to drop him further. When he's on his game, he's still one of the best goalies in the NHL. But if he doesn't clean up those bad starts that are happening way too often behind a team for which it shouldn't happen, I would be more forgiving. You know what? Actually, Lukas Dostal also has 8 really bad starts, but having 8 really bad starts behind the Ducks is better actually than the Stars. You shouldn't have 8 really bad starts behind the Stars. And these are 8 games that take Jake Ottinger out of the Vezina race so far this season, in my opinion.
And let's hope that he chooses hot more often than cold for the rest.
Well, if you're a Dallas
season.
fan, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, because they have a good chance. Like with the way that this season's going, like he needs to step up his game. Let's see who you have at number three, and this is another one that provides, valuable services to his team.
Yeah, and he is the man I had in my mind when I thought that he could drop in February because he's having a horrible start to the new year. That's Philip Gustafsson. But before those few horrible start to 2025, which have had him drop to 15th in goal save above expected,
Ooh.
he was still having a very good month of December. He's still sixth in save percentage at 9 to 18th. He has three shutout. He's 10th in the league in goal against average. I do think that his bad stretch is a fluke. I think that the Minnesota Wild hope it's a fluke. Although Fleury's been coming in some of those games, and he actually won one of the game in which he came in. But I do think Philip Gustafsson will play better in the next few games and stabilize his play. But so far, he's still there. Despite those few bad start of the year, he is still there. He really, really is playing tremendously, and I'm starting to wonder if the Minnesota Wild are going to have a tough decision to make in a few years, when, of course, Jesper Wallstedt is going to be in the NHL.
Yeah, okay. And let's hope that he's gonna get back on his feet for the next few weeks. At number two, we have someone that was not previously ranked who is entering the power ranking.
This is a tough one for me, because when evaluating Logan Thompson, the guy has 18 wins, and him and Charlie Lindgren, who came out of the game against Montreal, at that point were doing a almost perfect alternate system. There was one game in this season in which Thompson had back-to-back starts. That was the only time. Other than that, you were talking about goalie tandems earlier. This is the perfect goalie tandem. Like they're
Yeah.
operating their goalies like a Pee Wee Double B team in Washington this year. Both of them are good, and so you're looking at Thompson and you're like, okay, like, is he just a produce of the Washington Capitals? Am I giving in too much to the amount of wins? But the thing is, he is so consistent this year. And to me, this is one
Yeah.
of the biggest quality of a goalie: consistency. If you can do exactly the same thing and not necessarily steal games after game, but be consistent and give a chance to win to your team day in, day out, this is what he is doing. And to me, the stat that represents this the most for Logan Thompson, because he is fifth in the league in almost everything, despite such a low amount of game played. Well, there is another stat in which he is fifth in the league, but in that case, goal save above expected, he could be even higher. His goal save above expected per minute is very, very good. He would be number two if he had a bigger workload. You could argue that a bigger workload doesn't necessarily always mean playing better. A lot of goalies are better with a smaller workload, some career number two. But I do think Logan Thompson is deserving of the second place right now in this standing.
And he has such success recently that people are feeling that he is maybe entering the Vizina conversation. Do you think so?
Yeah, right now. The only problem is with the Vizina, you always have to wonder, okay, but the amount of game played, like
Yeah,
how much is it playing? But
course.
Linus Solmark won it, what was it now, two years ago, with only 48 starts. He did it under 50 starts, which is extremely rare. As of right now, though, Logan Thompson is not on pace for even 48 starts. So it would be really tough for him to be included.
And we've said it, but still ringing Connor Hellebuyck at number one.
You know what? I'm going to add one thing about Connor Hellebuyck. For the longest of time, I didn't want to hear an argument about Andrei Vasilevsky not being the best goalie of his generation, like the current goalie generation. So I would include in that, Vasilevsky, Hellebuyck. I think Bobrovsky is still more of a previous generation goalie with his age. Connor Hellebuyck is going to win a third Vizina this year. I think he's, like some people are going to, on the argument of a career, some people are going to bring the playoffs into it. So I would hear an argument about how Vasilevsky is better in the playoffs than Hellebuyck. But you know what? He might actually, if he wins his third Vizina, only Brodeur will have more Vizina than him in the salary cap era. So this is really starting to be a hell of a career for Connor Hellebuyck. But I did think that for most of his career, the people who were criticizing Carey Price playoff stats were really unfair because he was playing very good in the playoffs. The thing with goalie stats is, like they're they're accumulated. Like if you have a bad stretch, it takes down your whole stat. It's not like if
Yeah.
you score 50 goals in 30 games and zero for the next 50. Well, you still scored 50 goals for the whole season,
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
so Carey Price had some tough playoffs at the start of his career, but after that was absolutely terrific. Connor Hellebuyck, I do feel like, especially after last year, I do feel like the critics of his playoff plays are
Yeah.
still, warranted, and that he needs to have a big playoff this year to cement himself as the best goalie of his generation.
Yeah. But let's hope that like he can be a centerpiece for this playoff run. I'm surprised, Max, that Dustin Wolf and Shesterkin, let's talk about, the whole Rangers situation.
Yeah,
Maybe he's not there
yeah.
because of that, but like there are some of goalies that were close calls to your
Yeah.
ranking.
Um, Shesterkin is such. You know what? I almost had Shesty at number 5. He's
Mm,
he's still number 2 in goal save above expected,
yeah.
but the Rangers can't win a damn game. Well, they're starting maybe to climb a little bit back, and I was like, okay, how do you justify getting Shesty back into the top 5 because he was out of the last one?
Yeah.
And here's with Shesty, it's basically a case of Igor Shesterkin, him having a B plus is bad, whereas some goalies having a B plus is, it's all
Yeah.
in regards to the expectations. Yeah, my man Dustin Wolf, Jakob Markstrom also, Joey Dacker. There are a lot of goalies. Mackenzie Blackwood is going to be on a watch for February. I thought the Colorado Avalanche were kind of repeating the same mistake with Gorgiev, with Blackwood. He came in, he's very good, and they're like, all right, here's the contract. Whoa, 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 Colorado, chill.
Yeah, just like
But
chill.
so far, so
Like,
good.
yeah,
Mackenzie
thanks,
Blackwood,
that.
Markstrom, Dustin Wolf, and yeah, even Igor Shesterkin. Karel Vermelka is having a heck of a comeback season in Utah. I guess behind Connor Hellebuyck, there's like a bad. It's like the Tour de France right now. Like there's Connor Hellebuyck has his yellow jersey on, and everybody in BL is all stacked.
Yeah.
So this is kind of where we are right now.
Okay, so let's sit on that and see what the other ranking in February can bring. But it's interesting to see, like, and with the tandems, like it gives a lot of goalies a chance to like be
Yeah.
good and enter our power ranking. Thank you so much, Max. Thank you, Kev, also. Guys, this is a good start of 2025 for us. Thank you for being there. If you want to hit the subscribe button, if you're listening to us on YouTube, whether it's on Apple Podcast, Spotify, hit the subscribe button and give us a review, maybe, if you appreciate or not. We're going to take all of the comments. But thank you so much for being here. We are starting off the 2025 with you on a good note, and we'll talk later on Thursday for our next episode.